turning over to Nina, who knows much more about clean tech than I do, and she will be leading today's discussion. Nina?
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you, Neela, for having us. I just have to say right out of the gate here that in starting a new accelerator program, it can be daunting. It has a lot of overlap with the startup and entrepreneurship experience and thinking about navigating a path forward, and just can't say enough about what the value is to have Launch Minnesota in our corner and as partners, and elevating the opportunities here in Minnesota. So if anybody in today's forum is new to working with Launch Minnesota, just can't hype enough what great partners they've been and what a great resource they are if you are an entrepreneur. Even if you're not in the energy space where we specialize, that we're just really grateful for Launch. We have three amazing panelists with us this morning, and I'll get to their introductions in just a moment, representing some various roles here in the Midwest in entrepreneurship, clean energy economy, and investment and innovation. So as noted by Maddie, I'm Nina Axelson. I lead the Minnesota-based energy accelerator Grid Catalyst. We launched last year. My background is energy, environment, sustainability, and as someone working in that sector, I really saw the need for us to have more tools and methodologies that could help hard tech, especially in the energy sector, get through that commercialization valley of death. So the story I often tell is about one of the great Minnesota startups working in geothermal, Darcy Solutions, came to me at my last utility role and said, hey, we've got a great idea for a project, want to work with us on a demonstration? And my response was, well, do you have a demonstration project already? They said no. And I said, great, come back when you've got one. And if we do that to every single one of our hard tech startups, how do they ever make it into the marketplace? So my running joke with Brian from Darcy is, well, I tried to make it up to you by starting this accelerator program where we really do try and solve for that problem, which in particular is a unique program structure in the US for energy accelerator and incubator programs. So I think that part of the reason we did that is because Minnesota is so rich with assets and companies that are interested in science, technology, and sustainability. So having the public sector, private sector step in and say, we'll do a project with one of these startups, it really catalyzes how we move things into the marketplace. And we all know that we have to do it faster and more effectively than ever before. And the last thing I'll say about this is the amount of investment, and some of our speakers may speak to this a little bit more, that is coming in from both the public and private sector, then what we will see in the next 10 years, an overused term, but is absolutely unprecedented. The opportunities are going to be once in a generation to become clusters for clean tech. For us, our specialty can absolutely be in cold climate, and some categories where we really excel, as whether it's building science, battery storage, advanced transportation. We really do have a lot of expertise here in Minnesota. So running an accelerator program with the partners we have here is really a treat. So for anybody who wants to learn more, I'll stop talking about me so we can turn over to our awesome panelists. But I'll pop my email in the chat, and please don't hesitate to follow up if you're an entrepreneur who's curious about this space, if you're someone who wants to work with a startup in this space. I'm really excited to be part of the energy innovation ecosystem here. So with that, I'm going to have each of our three panelists introduce themselves, tell a little bit about their organization and how it connects to the energy innovation work. I'm gonna just go left to right. So Greg Mast, if you could go first and give us a short introduction.
Sure, I'll get unmuted. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Nina, and also Neela and Maddie. This is such a wonderful opportunity to talk about clean energy on a Friday. And I love to hear that we're ending the series for at least what it sounds like this year on a real high note with clean energy conversations today. So as Nina had mentioned, my name is Greg Mast, and I serve as the executive director of an organization called Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, or CEAM, as we are also commonly referred to. And we are an industry-led, nonpartisan, charitable organization that's based here in Minnesota. I have a team of 6 people, and we are primarily based out of, as you can see, Fueled Collective in downtown Minneapolis, the amazing co-working space, but we work statewide. And our mission is to provide educational leadership, collaboration, and policy analysis to accelerate clean energy market growth and smart energy policies. And so we are unique because we're powered by our business members. And this includes a diverse mix of companies ranging from Fortune 100 and 500 corporations to small and medium-sized companies. So today we have over 40 member companies that are working in and across the technology sectors of energy efficiency, wind, solar, biomass to energy, smart grid, and other advanced energy products and services. So together with our business members, we are focused on unlocking opportunities to grow jobs here in Minnesota, to attract and to continue to provide investment opportunities, and ultimately grow markets for energy efficiency and clean energy technologies all across the state. So an easy way to think about our organization is we focus on the business case for how and why we're moving and speeding towards a zero carbon future for Minnesota, for the country, and for the world. So a lot of our work is really intently focused at this nexus of business, policy, technology, and finance. And we look forward to hearing more of your questions and how my organization specifically can support you in your endeavors and connect to this tremendous ecosystem that is supporting clean energy development here in Minnesota. And just again, a huge tip of the hat to Neela, to Maddie, to Nina, to all of you on this call, because you're what makes Minnesota special, and I'm really excited for this morning's conversation.
Thank you, Greg. And just another nod to Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. Grid Catalyst would not have made it as far as we have in the last 18 months without the partnership of Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. We were initially launched as a program in partnership with SEAM, and really appreciate Greg's shared vision for what's possible here. So thank you for that, Greg, and dropped his website in the chat if anybody wants to check out a little bit more. Ian, our friend from Chicago, could you please go next?
Sure, thank you, Nina. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Ian Adams with Evergreen Climate Innovations, formerly Clean Energy Trust. We've been around a little over 10 years and really exist to support the early stage clean tech and climate tech ecosystem in the Midwest. We're structured as a nonprofit, but we operate an early stage investment fund. So we invest and support early stage climate tech entrepreneurs across the Midwest. We're based here in Chicago, but sort of are active Pittsburgh to Denver, roughly. So we really believe that innovation is an important part of where we need to go, especially in sort of looking more than a decade out. You know, the new technologies that still need to be commercialized and developed. And our organization was founded because some of our founders felt like, I think correctly, like there was all kinds of great stuff happening in the Midwest, great, Fortune 500s, great research universities, a lot of intelligent entrepreneurs, but there wasn't like a cohesive ecosystem the way you sort of have in Boston and San Francisco. Some of that's just geographic. It's harder for me to bump into someone in Minneapolis or St. Paul if I'm walking down the street in Chicago. So that's why we really exist. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Ian, so much. We're going to turn it over to Adam, who is one of our really amazing energy startups here in Minnesota, and officing out of University Enterprise Labs, where they have their battery prototype up and running. So Adam, welcome. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Very good. Thanks, Nina. Happy to be here. Honored to be on the same panel with Ian and Greg this morning. So thank you for inviting us. Unfortunately, my partner and founder, Zara, is not here today, so it's just me. But want to also say thank you, Nina, for inviting me, and then Neela and the Launch MN team for our grant that we had last year through the Launch MN program. It's definitely been useful as we try and gather funds for the company. But my name is Adam Iliff. Came out of Tesla Energy, was with Tesla Energy over 6 years, up until just a little bit ago. And through that work out in California, Texas, and the Northeast, found a really large market in the commercial and industrial space that was unmet. It seems that companies were either focusing on the mass market residential energy storage systems or the big utility plays. They were going after the big whales, the 500 million, $1 billion projects. And there were a lot of customers that have certain needs for backup power generation, peak power shaving through a battery energy storage system. So I decided, instead of moving out to California with Czar or moving out to the East Coast, why don't we give it a go here in Minneapolis, St. Paul? And we're doing that today. So have the prototype in the back here. It's up and running, like Nina said, and we're starting to move our first units out the door. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Adam. Adam was actually one of the first startup founders, him and Zara, when we first got going last year. And I deeply appreciate Adam's experiences here, not only in moving hard tech forward and all the challenges he can share that come with that and the kind of resources they need to be successful. But also, we know that with a lot of entrepreneurs, you probably may not be doing your startup as your full-time job. So Adam is one of the hardest working folks around, and appreciate that he has the vision and diligence to keep working on the potential of Vessel. And hopefully maybe we have something come out of today's conversation that keeps moving them forward as well. I'm going to turn back to Greg and Ian for the first question here. And I'll go through hopefully a short set of questions. And I know we're going to leave some time at the end because you all probably have some unique questions and perspectives on this. One of the reasons I use that overused term of unprecedented is because we know that between the Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS and Science Act, which were both passed in the last few months, there is an incredible amount of federal investment coming into energy and climate tech. Again, a more focus on hard tech, that is an incredible opportunity. And this falls right in the period of time where we've seen an incredible uptick in private investment, where we've seen, I think between 2020 and 2021, there's something like a 200% increase in investment in climate tech from private investors. So, really trying to understand how do we think about what the big opportunities are especially when it's this enormous, and what does that mean for Minnesota and the Midwest? So for Ian and Adam, are there specific things that your organizations are focused on within this big landscape of opportunity that you would want to just point out? And either of you go for it.
Sure. I think there's, like you said, really unprecedented. And I think folks are still digesting to understand the scale of what has been passed, because I think we're in the United States, we're used to there being some tax subsidies for some things, and it's sort of here or there. And this is sort of on a different scale of magnitude where it's really looking to move a market with really comprehensive structures. So I think overall, the thing that really stands out to me is like the consistency and rationality of the puzzle. And not only in the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act, which is more focused earlier on R&D, but there was also an energy bill in late 2020 that helped sort of set the table for this, and then the infrastructure bill in 2021. So I think it's best to think of these all as like a multi-part sandwich. But because of the comprehensiveness, the longer time horizons, and some of the specific provisions, they can provide a lot more certainty to businesses that will allow them to plan a lot more. I think that's one, and another is the domestic investment provisions. One of those is an advanced manufacturing tax credit to make the parts for wind, solar, energy storage in the United States, and then also some provisions in the electric vehicle tax credit.
Thank you, Ian. Just one follow-up question to that before we turn to Greg. Have you seen anything? We know that there's been some early signals from fairly large companies, but from your purview, anything that you're seeing already from especially that domestic focus on production?
Yeah, well, we see a lot of new announcements, and we operate at the very early stage, but we read the same press clips as other folks. But there have been just in the last couple months, there have been, I think it's more than a dozen announcements of either vehicle retooling or battery supply chain manufacturing plant announcements. And part of that is essentially the electric vehicle tax credit said you have to meet a certain amount of your supply of the parts domestically, and it ramps up over time. And there was some criticism of that it was sort of unrealistic, and it didn't, and almost none of the current vehicles would qualify. And one thing you've seen is it seems like, at least early on, like it's working out pretty well, and a lot of these companies are announcing new plants. And some of the logic here, it's not just that there's a tax credit, different different locales in different countries have different regimes, but this industry is growing so much that I've heard, I think Jesse Jenkins, the Princeton professor and sort of energy talking head, talk about, like, if we're going to build an entire new supply chain, if we're going to scale up 10x, you may as well build a bunch of that domestically. So it's not that we're competing one for one against labor in China or Malaysia or someplace else. We're building new capacity, and so it makes sense to build a lot that close by.
Thanks, Ian. That's really helpful insight. Greg, I'm sure you've got some things to say about these opportunities.
I do. And do we only have like 45 minutes remaining?
Yeah, we'll just take the rest of the time with you answering this question.
I'm just kidding. I'll be very brief because I think Adam also had some good insights to share on this. I think from our organization's perspective, and much like Ian had said, I mean, it is unprecedented what we are seeing from the federal level, as well as hopefully some swift action here at the state level in Minnesota when it comes to supporting this acceleration of clean energy. And in addition to, I think I've heard the number somewhere by like the end of the decade, by 2030, the federal government's going to eventually invest more than $500 billion to accelerate the development and the deployment of zero carbon energy solutions, while also mitigating the impacts of climate change. I think I'm sure all of us on this call care a lot about. And so that is approximately, I think some estimates are like $80 billion a year. And that has been over the last decade, somewhere around $20 to $30 billion a year. So we are looking at an incredible step change in really pushing forward innovation that, similar to what Ian had mentioned, is really going to strengthen our energy security as a country, and it's going to unleash innovation that's going to ultimately deliver low cost and cost savings, but low cost clean energy solutions to consumers. And a lot of what I talk a lot about with folks is, what's driving clean energy? And when we look at the market, and I've had a board member, and Nina Axelson as well, is in full disclosure, a board member of Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. I'm so fortunate to have her leadership as part of this organization when we launched in 2016. But three big drivers right now where we're looking at harnessing and leveraging this federal and hopefully state action to move innovation forward. It's really around three things. One, it's clean energy solutions are reducing costs. So I mentioned that just a little bit earlier. Two, it's mitigating real risks to organizations. And three, it's just tremendous business and economic opportunity. This transition to clean, affordable, reliable energy is a huge economic opportunity. And our work at SEAM is very much focused on ensuring that Minnesota captures and maximizes as much of that economic opportunity as possible. So I'm going to just stop there, turn it over to Adam. I'm sure there's some specific things that he'd like to also share that has him excited regarding some of this recent kind of announcements and policy. But one quick note, I'm not sure if some of you may have missed this, but specific to IRA passing the Inflation Reduction Act, Cummins here locally had just announced a couple of weeks ago that they are going to be investing in hydrogen electrolyzer facility here in Fridley. And that is a really big deal as we look at hydrogen as a key component to this clean energy transition. And there are some substantial incentives for hydrogen development and deployment as part of the IRA bill. And we're seeing those local impacts and, again, those big business decisions as an outcome. So we're very excited about that.
Thanks, Greg. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Thanks, Ian. Some really good points. If I could dive even deeper, I'd probably spend an hour to 2 hours a week. So put my director of operations for the West Coast for the fastest growing solar company nationwide, EPC, hat on. As we look at the IRA with my team, we're looking at the investment or the tax credit going from 26% to 30%, which is huge in the solar realm. So if you have a 25-year power purchase agreement, that 4% tax credit translates to real dollars back to customers. So A, that's huge. B, the guidance is still to come out on IRA, so we don't know specifically what the landscape is going to look like over the next 10, 15 years. But what we do know is the IRA says for solar projects over 1 megawatt that they have to be prevailing wage. So for the electrical unions, the steel or the electrical trades, the steel trades, folks that are involved in building these power plants, wages go from $30 an hour, $27 an hour, all the way up to $42 to $46 an hour. So that's real wage increase in the clean energy sector, right? I've heard, I was at SPI or RE Plus a few weeks back, and I heard that with this investment tax credit, if you live or are building projects in certain zones, like opportunity zones in Minneapolis, St. Paul, you can get credits up to 60%, which actually pays the folks that are installing solar or energy storage immediately. There's immediate payback, and the systems are almost free at 60%. So that's huge as we move forward into this thing. So those are just kind of specific takeaways from the IRA. Don't know exactly what it means for Vessel yet. I do know that there's a 10% tax credit specifically for energy storage in addition to the 30% solar. So that's going to be helpful for us moving forward, but still kind of trying to get a lay of the land. We're expecting guidance, I think, at the earliest, maybe by January, February, at worst, hopefully by April, May of next year. So.
Thanks for that. Again, we could have had a whole half-day workshop with treats and conversation about this. So maybe that's the next event we bring together in person. So thanks a lot, Minnesota, for getting us into the beginning parts of that conversation. Adam, since we're with you, I just want to ask this. Can you share a little bit more about your general experience launching an energy startup in Minnesota? What's been great? What's been challenging? Again, a topic I realize could take up an hour in itself, but maybe just give us a little insight to what that's been like for you.
Yeah, super easy. It's a breeze, you know, it takes no time at all. Just click of the fingers, right? No, it's, Nina, that I guess launching a startup here in the Twin Cities, the clean tech community is small, but extremely supportive, right? We've only been doing this for a year and a half, full time. And the folks that we've met, we're now meeting them on a regular basis, and we're able to have really deep conversations because it's such a tight-knit community. Everybody can have a frank conversation, right? There's not really a lot of judgment. You're not in San Francisco meeting with the big folks out there. You're not in Boston, New York, meeting with big folks out there. You can just have really honest conversations about what this is, what's going on. And so that's been a delight actually for Zara and I, right? On the flip side, we're a small, tight-knit community, and we're still in the energy and clean tech sector in the upper Midwest. We're still trying to get our branches out to the coast. I still have folks in California calling anywhere from Nevada to, you know, Atlanta, Georgia, flyover states, right? Nothing seems to really matter to the folks out there. And so it's been a fun thing to try and grow a company here and show folks on those coasts that we can actually build something that's high quality, that meets the market. And we're right in the center of the universe here, so we can go both sides, right? So challenges, raising money. in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I'm at UEL, and it's a place that has a ton of biomed and life science folks around me. Everybody's tweaking stuff with, you know, their beakers and working on all that kind of stuff. And here I am, an energy storage manufacturing startup at UEL. So raising capital in this environment is a little bit different, but still a fun challenge to meet. So those are probably my takeaways. Thanks, Nina.
Thanks, Adam. Again, I know we're just, that's like the tip of the iceberg of what the experience is, but appreciate you offering that specifically. So I'm going to go back to a question that, you know, to any of the panelists, but specifically Ian and Greg. So we talked about CHIPS and Science Act, Inflation Reduction Act, but given what Adam is noting as the challenges and the opportunities, what other major trends are you seeing in the sector that entrepreneurs should be tracking and considering?
I'm going to defer to Ian to start because he's an investor. And I think it's really important for everyone on this call to hear his perspective.
Sure. You know, I think one is, in general, there's more money coming into the space. That might be drawing back a little bit compared to a peak last year, but a lot of new funds. But a lot of those, you know, they may be, that's globally, a lot of that money is still a little bit later stage. That said, there's more like early entrepreneurial support with organizations like Grid Catalyst. I think that is a thing that is really is different from sometimes people talk about clean tech 1.0 versus 2.0, and 1.0 was like the peak of that was right before Solyndra went bankrupt. And one thing it lacked was like a nuanced capital stack and a complete range of support entities. And so that's, I think, a difference. I'm biased, obviously, because we operate in this space. One thing I think really matters writ large are more, I would say, novel approaches to attacking the price premium that certain climate-friendly or low GHG solutions have, especially for hard to abate sectors. So one of these, Stripe, the payment processing company, has actually been a leader in helping direct fund early carbon removal projects. And they essentially got some of their other software buddies together, and they put together an entity called Frontier Climate, which has committed a little short of $1 billion, essentially to make advanced purchase commitments, saying, hey, like startup that hasn't done anything yet, trying to do some carbon removal, you know, making bio-based oil and pumping it back into the ground, or speeding up the weatherization of rocks, or other carbon removal approaches. And they're saying, if you build this, we will pay you for it. Here's a $300 million commitment in 2028. The money will be there, which I think can really help goose and open up a really burgeoning market. Another one is Breakthrough Catalyst, which is part of Breakthrough Energy, which is the Bill Gates funded sort of multifaceted entity. They've got a venture fund, they've got sort of an early innovator support entity. They just last week announced a $50 million grant to a company here in the Midwest, LanzaJet, which is a spinoff of LanzaTech, in order to help them advance their technology, which enables them, to, you know, longer term to make sustainable aviation fuel from advanced biofuels, which is exciting because we've got lots of advanced biofuel inputs here in the Midwest as well. And so that's, I think, the kind of thing where $50 million grant from a nonprofit is pretty robust. Those are for very specific sectors, but I find that really interesting. I think folks have identified some of the problems that has held up commercialization of new technologies in the past, and are working to address them. You know, my former colleague at Evergreen actually wrote a paper about how venture capital was a poor fit for deep tech energy commercialization a few years ago, and now he works at that Breakthrough entity, helping provide solutions to sort of help address those gaps there. So those are some of the things that I think are pretty exciting.
Thanks, Ian. I love hearing stories about folks who have been at the heart of the problem and then, you know, evolve into, I can go fix it. You know, I understand the problem from a unique perspective, or I'm just not going to let it continue to be in this way. So that's a great story too. Greg, would you like to offer some insights here?
I think building off of what Ian has shared from Team's perspective and from what I've been seeing, and I know that for several of us on this call, I see a number of familiar faces as well. I mean, collectively, my goodness, we've got a lot of years, probably a lot of decades in the energy space and the innovation space. And so it's exciting to be, again, having this conversation. I think what has me really excited and our organization excited is now that there are, it's not only because innovation and the cost curves have come down, where you see wind energy and solar energy as being the lowest cost way to generate new electricity. We've seen incentives work the way that they were designed to spur innovation forward, figure out the business model, and get these technologies to where they can compete with the incumbent technologies of the day. And so that's really exciting. And at the same time, now with all of these other incentives, I think that the focus, and where I'm excited for Nina and Grid Catalyst, so much of it is going to be key on deployment. It's taking some of those market-ready technologies. So for those of you on this call who have market-ready technology, there's just tremendous opportunities now and support for deployment. And some of the CHIPS and Science Act money, although that is a significant amount of dollars that are going in, a lot of that, because it's only been authorized, not appropriated. So we're still waiting to see if that money moves forward. A lot of that is really geared toward technology development that's probably post 2030. And so I think that those of you who are working on these solutions that are near or market ready today, the big focus is on deployment, because we need the carbon emissions reduction, but we also have the incentives and the support mechanisms in place to get those solutions into the market. And so just underscoring the coordination that it's going to take amongst all of us on this call, with our state partners, with our federal partners, that is going to be critical to get these solutions into the market. But some specific concrete sectors that we're very excited about: buildings. How do we continue to increase the efficiency and figure out how to not only provide the cost savings and lower the operating costs, but also the emissions in buildings? Buildings account for 40% of all emissions in our economy. So the building sector is a huge opportunity. As many of you know, in Minnesota, transportation emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, is the largest sector that we see of carbon emissions in the state. So how do we continue to bring solutions forward that are helping to decrease those carbon emissions in our transportation sector? And that can be in supply chain solutions all across manufacturing. A lot of people jump to the EVs, but certainly there are heavy duty, medium duty, light duty vehicles that, and then the technologies, but also the supply chain manufacturing opportunities. Also, how do we think about recycling a lot of these components, whether they are solar panels, modules, wind turbine blades, other components? There's a huge opportunity for recycling. And how do we do that? Thinking again, circular economy, sustainability principles, et cetera. That is an ongoing opportunity, but also debate, not only here in Minnesota, but across the country. How do we do that? And then the last thing that I will mention is two things: huge opportunities with ag and forestry. So I think that those, and then Minnesota is blessed with abundant agricultural and forestry resources. How do we ensure that we can do that sustainably, but move forward innovations in that sector? And then also the critical minerals, the metals. Minnesota, I know that can be very highly debated, controversial, but again, I think the intention of what we're seeing in IRA and a lot of this massive legislation is, how do we move supply chains and the critical minerals and the materials that are going to be necessary for ensuring that we're able to make this clean energy transition successful? How do we do that working either with domestic materials and minerals and or from countries that are friendly allies, and not from places that frankly are just not in the national interest for what we're looking to do? And so that is also something that I want all of you to keep in mind is, what are the inputs? Where is the labor coming from? These are all important things, and you will see that there are incentives that are encouraging as much of that to be domestic, and also prevailing wage, et cetera, as possible in your operations. So those are just a couple of things that I would also lift up and highlight.
Thanks, Greg. I know we're going to run out of time here, so I want to make sure that we spend the remaining time talking about where entrepreneurship and the startup experience really feeds into this. Because I'll tell you, when I listen, especially, all three of the panelists about the opportunities and the economic movement and, you know, workforce. It all seems really big and can be a little daunting. And so I've noticed when I go out and talk to budding entrepreneurs and students and others, like trying to figure out where's my place in that. Do I have to go be in a research position for 10 years and then I've got to, you know, go through the trials and tribulations that Adam mentioned. So I'm thinking about how do we support folks who want to be in this innovation space? How do we welcome them, especially in Minnesota? Sorry, Ian, but you know, we're one of your states too, right? So we'll have a little bit of that focus, but where's the on-ramp? How do we support those folks? What are the ideas here? And I'm gonna go to Adam with this first because you're the closest to the experience and thinking about what do we need to really support the innovation ecosystem for folks looking to be part of this?
Nina, do you mind if I talk a little bit practically? Is that all right? Of how to do this in Minnesota or in the upper Midwest?
You got the mic, man. You go for it.
All right. For the folks that are out there, if you are wanting to do something like this, first of all, keep your day job for as long as you possibly can. Get a mentor or two mentors in your space and really lean into them. I mean, the folks that are going to be in your space, and they're going to want to help. They're going to want to help you grow, and they're going to get excited to see you grow. So reach out, find a mentor, and just really start hammering ideas through them. I would say work as well is just because you don't have money coming in the door, or you don't really have an idea, or maybe the idea hasn't become concrete in your head yet, start building the foundations for your startup, right? You've got a business plan. Liveplan.com for us has been a great resource. We can go in, change financials, change the business plan. There's tons of help in liveplan.com that's helped us. So start building a business plan. Start looking at your go-to-market strategy. And go-to-market strategy means, in practical terms, what is your specific market that you're looking to attack, and how are you going to get there, right? How large is it? How are you going to fund it? How are you going to implement or deploy what you'd like to do in the market? So just get really, you get out of your head and start getting things on paper, okay? And then start getting into the community. So start putting yourself out there. Once you have an idea and you're getting a pretty good lay of the land as far as what you want to do, start putting a pitch deck together, right? Start looking and seeing what that is. I think Vessel did MinCup last year. And from that, we got a great mentor. We've been through the Launch Him In program. The University of Minnesota put startup Launchpad together to start having you really look at what your markets are. So those are just some boots on the ground. How do I start doing this? And then read. So there's some great books out there. There's a couple of great venture capital books. Ian probably help me. Brad Felder, can't remember what his last name
Deals,
is. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Ian. And then for us, we're building hardware. So a great book for me a year and a half, 2 years ago was Regulatory Hacking. And Ian talks about how in the software world has picked all the low-hanging fruit. So moving into hardware, what we need domestically is companies, and I get excited about hardware, sorry. So building hardware, yeah, there's a longer ramp for building hardware. It's not going to be a 6-month play and then all of a sudden you get $5 million and you sell your company in 3 years. It's going to be a longer ramp for us. We're looking at what is 10, 15 years out look like for Vessel. So, but once you get in, once you start moving through that regulatory environment, and once you start getting, UL listings and your product deployed, you start getting entrenched into the market. And while that might take 5 years to get that entrenchment, man, once you're there, you are really there, and you can see some really solid growth in the regulatory markets. So those are my tips.
That was fantastic, Adam. I'm glad that's the route that you took, and that's why we defer to the folks who are in the thick of it and have the experiences for that great advice. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to go to Ian and Greg, but I also just want to make sure I point out the follow-up question from Mark in case that changes what Ian and Greg might want to offer as far as not only having that idea and how we do that idea incubation, but also for the deep tech folks, how do we make sure that we retain them and keep them in this work when the pathway is so long? And that's a lot of what we think about for Grid Catalyst, is making sure we not only don't lose them from their entrepreneurship journey, but we also don't lose them to other states that might offer them more resources that we can't. So Ian and Greg, and this will probably be our closeout question here on any other advice for our entrepreneurs or resources you'd point them to?
In terms of one resource I wanted to flag, we put together a list of resources for climate tech entrepreneurs in the Midwest. It's at heartland-climate.org. And that has like a list of different accelerators and incubator programs, demonstration programs, other initiatives like that. I definitely agree with with a lot of what Adam was saying there, particularly like in keeping your day job. Like one thing that I think folks don't always connect with is that like it takes time to figure out that fit, in addition to that commercialization that may be required for a deep tech solution. It takes a lot of time to figure out that fit. And like successful companies that we know now are doing something different than what they did when they started. Like the ride sharing company Lyft started out as another company that was offering rides to people on college campuses back to home. Like that's sort of like what they're doing now, but it's not the same thing. And that first thing what didn't have the scale that was required. So figuring out how you can stretch that plan out, whether that's through other income, through non-dilutive sources of grants to enable to have multiple bites of the apple. Obviously, it may make sense to go full time at some point, but essentially giving yourself that opportunity to be wrong about the thesis a few times. In terms of keeping folks, I think the pandemic has actually, for all the negative, obvious negative things it has brought, it has actually made things easier. A lot of investors on the coast are more willing to invest in places wherever that are not adjacent to them because they got comfortable with doing it remotely because they had to. And many programs now, some of the newer programs are not as geographically focused. So I mentioned that breakthrough program. They have an innovation and focus program where they're going to go support the innovator. They're giving them money to work on their technical milestones, and they don't care where they are. And some of them are in France, and some of them are in the Midwest, and some of them are on the coast, and they're just funding them where it makes the most sense for them. So I think there's, now that the space is bigger and more nuanced, it's less about like, let's grab and hold on to everyone we can. It's sort of like a zero sum, and it's less zero sum than it used to be.
Thanks, Ian. Greg, any final thoughts on this question, and then we'll move to questions from the audience with our remaining time.
Got a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to be very succinct. I think for all of you, because you're on this call, it's a big kind of kudos that you're plugged into this community, that you understand where to like seek out some resources that are helping to support your journey as either an entrepreneur, a startup, an emerging company. But there are so many people that we still are working to connect with throughout Minnesota to ensure that they are aware of the amazing work and resources that Neela and Maddie are providing, that Nina is providing. So please continue to be an evangelist to those that you know in your network, to make sure that they're aware and that they get connected up to all of these amazing resources. Because I can tell you, and I know this because me and I go back a long way, 20 years ago when I was starting a company in this space in Minnesota, there was, I think at the time, I think Dan and Scott were just getting MinCup off the ground. There were so few resources to support energy and clean energy entrepreneurs and startups. And now fast forward to today, it is, to me, mind-boggling how many resources there are. And now it's not necessarily an issue of resources, it's an issue of ensuring that all of our colleagues in our industry are aware of them and are connected to them and can best leverage them, because people are here to help. And so to Adam's earlier point, I think that what's special about Minnesota, and this can be good and bad depending on perspective, but we are so interconnected and we know one another and we want to see people succeed. And I mean that genuinely. And so I think that that is my one parting thing would just be, there's an amazing amount of resources, get connected and work them and make sure other people are also aware of them.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, I know we're running short on time. We got about 13 minutes left. I do, in case it, prompts some other questions from the group too, just want to point out that, we've heard a lot today about how much potential there is both in the energy innovation economy, Minnesota's clean energy economy. You're going to always hear from me that the opportunity is now, the opportunity is here. And again, for the folks from Minnesota, I really want to remind you that if we don't support the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurship here, folks will take advantage of the money and the investment and the opportunities in other states, and then they will just sell us back all that technology at a premium. So Ian, I don't want to erase what you said, which is we need the global economy. We need the innovation ecosystem to run from state to state. And that is essential. But we also have some goals in Minnesota. So it's like a balance of those two things. Without you as a partner working across the Midwest and across the country, we would be worse off. But so really just want to have that as my final thought on this as we move to questions from the audience. So feel free to raise your hand or just come off mute, unless Maddie has some other moderation tips here.
I did put out, this is Arup Mathur from Terraform Technologies. I mean, I think I resonate with what Greg said. We have been following very closely what the Fed is trying to do in terms of investments. Like you said, like right now, only about 10% has been released, largely only from SATO. But I think building technology is still, it's kind of way behind, but they have a lot of funds coming in. And I think what we really need is a scalable, repeatable solution, a pilot that we can demonstrate in community-wide. I think that's kind of what RDD is looking for, is development demonstration. If we can demonstrate kind of a good solution which incorporates some of the innovation that each one of us are bringing, I think that could be a good thing. So I think just getting the right people together, Nina, might be a way to go about it. And that's kind of what I talked to Neela and Maddie the other day. So thanks for getting me here on this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that observation. I think, we talk a lot in our program in particular about not just the investment or the momentum or the opportunity, but where's the equity in that conversation. And even when we were doing our demonstration projects, there's this case to be made to say Minnesota is a great place to do this work because you can have a 3M or you could have another major corporation. I mean, the stronghold of businesses and institutions here is amazing. But how do we leverage those resources into making sure that the pilot projects and the jobs and these other things go into communities that aren't at this table, who haven't been at this table? And I think that's the sustainability, not from the environmental side, but from the economics and wealth gap and other components. So I really do think that's such an important point about scalability and access. And so I really appreciate that.
And one thing I don't think we touched on earlier at the federal level, I believe it was in the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's a new entity at the Department of Energy called the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, which is intended to support at a variety of levels, more demonstration activities, some of that very large scale, multi-billion-dollar hydrogen hubs, but also newer, smaller funding, small business innovation research grants focused on demonstration projects. So that's a good example of, the future's not yet written there. I think I'm actually joining a workshop next week in case anyone's interested in participating on how that office and how some of the funding for startups should be structured to make sure it's most impactful and is supporting the relevant partners in the ecosystem as well as the startups. So new and interesting opportunities there as well.
Thanks, Ian. Other questions or comments from the group? Don't be shy.
Yeah. Oh, I won't be shy. I got two areas that actually no, there's three, but I'll keep limiting it. The first one I want to click on is this idea, and I was on the phone with one of my former startups in Texas, and she makes, I think, 3D printer. I mean, she's got, it's all supply chain, it's all manufacturing, right? She looked like she was going to break down, cry. That was kind of like the year she's had, you know, and it's like, it's all around manufacturing. It's all around attracting talent and people, right? So there's this kind of this idea that since we are in this, we talk about manufacturing, but can we create a pathway for, and for onboarding, as you mentioned, Nina, and retention, right? So like, can we get them everywhere from a prototype to small scale to manufacturing, all the way up to like mainstream manufacturing, and surround it with the workforce and talent, right? I think there's a couple things in there. Like, one is just having those capabilities here with supply chain issues around the world, as we think forward, so that it's kind of self-contained for them. There's like less risk there. The second is just the idea of like workforce, I don't know, Samantha's particular issue was she was competing with, Tesla's moved to Austin, right? So now that she's competing with Tesla and other people for these kind of these manufacturing talent. So, is there a way to kind of like make sure that we have enough kind of a talent there to support them as well? It's just a kind of a thought for the group. I think that could be a unique thing that we could do that would like grow and retain. And I'm interested to hear Adam's, because Adam's in that world, right? Like, what does that look like for you, as you try and scale and go through the bumpy periods?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Adam, do you want to comment at all on that? Otherwise.
Sure, Mark. It's boy, that's like I would love to have 20 folks manufacturing vessels in a manufacturing facility in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I can't even wrap my head around it quite yet, right? What does one employee look like? What does 5 employees look like? What I can tell you is we have Honeywell here in our backyard. We have 3M in our backyard. We have Medtronic, and Medtronic is doing fantastic battery work. So that those same engineers and that same talent, those same programmers building those softwares, that's easily translatable for us. So it's just really nice to know that I'm not in the middle of a cornfield.
Yep.
Somewhere that, there's a ton of engineering talent in the Twin Cities already. And I know that I'm going to be able to draw on that as we grow.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's not where the bottleneck is, right? So there's lots of design talent out there, no question. But those people aren't going to jump into a factory and start like building those things for you, right? No, I mean, seriously, that's where I've seen the most tension and friction with the startup community that are manufacturing stuff. It's like, that's where the rubber, like, you could be out there selling based on that great engineering, and it's like, you won't, where does it go from
building
there?
the things, right? Like actually building them, right?
Yeah, and getting to that awkward stage too.
Yeah, for us, so our first product is a bit more of a premium product going out the door. So what we're hoping as we build it, that because it's a more of a premium product, we can pay more of a premium wage and attract people, right? So we're not going for a $13 an hour factory line worker, right? We need to support them with a higher wage, but also the benefits and everything else to support them. And that's a interesting thing, right?
Yeah.
Of the many follow-up sessions we could and maybe could have, that maybe Grid Catalyst could co-host and launch in next year. I think this workforce transition, which Greg's team at Clean Energy Economy of Minnesota has done a significant, him and Virginia Rudder on his team have done a lot of work around economic development and workforce. And I see Rob Davis with Connexus Energies with us too. And he's been really observant about where do we already have talent and workforce or infrastructure that transitions over to that. So again, with 4 minutes left, we won't really be able to dig into that topic. But I think it's a really good, as we think about what are the problems to solve, but what are the opportunities in the future. I think this piece of, hey, Minnesota's got this incredible manufacturing capability, and hey, Minnesota has this window expertise or building science expertise. How does that build out our place in the innovation ecosystem and these opportunities with domestic manufacturing, and help solve Adam's problems of making sure he has the right people to hire? So, All right, we've got 3 minutes left. So if there's one more question someone's sitting with, of course, we've got, I think, everybody's contact info in the chat at this point. But otherwise, I'm going to let the panelists kind of give a final promo for what they have on the horizon. All right. So under 60 seconds, Greg, you can go first. Anything you want to make sure folks leave thinking about where there's opportunities with SEAM?
Yeah, I would just say these are the types of conversations that continue to have me super excited. I get up every day and I love the work that we do, that I do, that all of us do together. And so we know that as our energy system continues to transform to more sustainable forms of energy, this economic opportunity, this job opportunity, and also the important opportunity to reduce emissions is critically important, and we're all working together. So these are going to be things that hopefully Minnesota continues to lead on to strengthen both our economy and our energy security of the state. So looking forward to staying in touch with all of you.
Thanks, Greg. And I'll also just note recent jobs report on the SEAM website also, so really good information and part of what SEAM is bringing to the table for us too. Ian?
I think just generally, one thing that I think is interesting so there's a lot more federal dollars, a lot of different places. Some of those dollars can be used to support that ecosystem. And the way that the government has really coalesced over the last 5 or 10 years is cluster-based economic development. So you're talking about some of those clusters, some of those corporate entities, the window manufacturing expertise, for example, in Minnesota, among other things. But I think it's sort of a two-part. The way that the government wants to fund economic development now is through cluster-based comprehensive things. So not just something that is looking at the startups, but the startups and also the relationships with and corporate connectivity and also the workforce development. So they're looking at more integrated solutions. That's at the DOE, that's at the Economic Development Administration as well, with the inside the Department of Commerce. So I think that really is an opportunity to say, all right, here's what we're going to do, and have something be comprehensive. That's the way the government wants it done anyway, and they're dramatically increasing the amount of money that's flowing to that. So I think an opportunity there.
Thanks, Ian. Adam, what do you got? You've said a lot of amazing things. So one last promo for the awesome work of Vessel.
Awesome. So Reed with Groove Capital and I had a conversation at the end of July. And I said to Reed, okay, what is it going to take for Groove Capital to invest in Vessel? And he said, go out and sell 5, right? Okay, so I'll go out and sell 5. So I started picking up the phone in August, and we had our first sale, first pre-sale early September. And then we just closed the deal on another 3 units moving out to California. All of them, the customers paid us in cash upfront. So that's a fantastic place for us to be in. And we're going to continue to attack that market. And boy, it'd be great if every single customer wanted to pay us cash upfront and then delivery in 24 to 26 weeks. So that's where we are, and we're just really looking forward to keep growing here in the Twin Cities. And thanks for all your support. Nina, you've been fantastic. Greg, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and love seeing you guys over coffees and happy hours and all the other things that we get invited to. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam. I know we're over on time. Hopefully, folks, I'm so fortunate to be working with incredible people in this ecosystem. Stellar examples on this call. Please reach out to us at Grid Catalyst, and if you want to continue the conversation, we are trying to build partnerships and an ecosystem here, and we can only do it with great partners like we have here today. So Maddie and Neela, any closing thoughts?
I just want to say thank you for a very informative panel and for all that you do every day to serve this sector. Launch Minnesota, our role is to help connect and convene and catalyze some of these efforts, but we can't do that without all of you and your expertise. So we rely heavily on your work, Nina, and just grateful for your partnership with SEAM also. And of course, the grit and tenacity of our startups like Anoop and Adam and others. So just to know that, I reiterate the words that Greg mentioned earlier, we have an incredible state of organizations, individuals, expertise, and we're just all trying to work together to make sure that it's more connected and coordinated, and that we can leverage everyone's strengths so we can get Adam and Anoop and others on this call to the market faster and continuing to grow our economy and solving some big problems that we need to address. So thank you so much.